before we get into 30, are there any questions that you might have had from last week while I was out, pre-filmed and all of that? I thought it was easy. I thought it was a whole bunch of verses that are quoted in the New Testament, and it almost makes it, because those guys are just constantly saying, hey, that verse there in Isaiah is talking about right now. It's now being fulfilled. It's like 10 times. I don't remember the number, but it was a whole bunch of times. So you know that passage in Isaiah, those passages, 28, 29, were referencing the first century and all the stuff in there that goes with it. So there's a few, like maybe before this class, there's a few passages, a few verses in there where you would have been scratching your head, not sure what they meant. But then once you keep them in context and couple them with all of the things that you know happened there in the first century, it makes those things a little easier to understand. That was kind of the learning method that we went through when we would come up on, this is 30 years ago when we started studying this stuff, when we would come across something that we didn't understand, it would be, the very next verse would be, and Christ came into town riding on a donkey, and we'd be like, okay, well, whatever this verse is talking about, it has to be talking about, and in the day where Christ came into town riding on a donkey. That, I'm using it metaphorically, but it didn't say that every verse. But that's kind of how we knew this is all first century fulfillment. So some of these more poetical or apocalyptic, symbolic things are sitting there coupled with all of these messianic prophecies. Isaiah is full of them. And here we go in chapter 30, and he starts off saying, woe to the rebellious children. That's the Jews. Okay, he's, again, what is the book about? I've asked this every class. Isaiah the son of Amoz, which he gave concerning Judah and Jerusalem, right? The ones that break the everlasting covenant. He says, woe to this rebellious children. And it makes me think of Matthew chapter 23, where he's saying, I tried, I kept trying, but you would not. There at the end of chapter 23, when he's saying, oh, you scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites, ye that kill us the saints and the prophets, upon this generation, I'm going to destroy you. Well, God is a jealous God. In these first several verses here, 1 through 7, what you have going on is you have, in Isaiah's time, you have the Jews, they are turning to not God for help. They're turning to Egypt. They're thinking, hey, maybe if we ally up with Egypt, we can stop Sennacherib from wiping us all out. And again, I'm not really worried about the type here. I'm not worried about the thing that's going on during Isaiah's time, because that's not Isaiah's main focus. He's setting this up as an example, and you'll see in verse 8 what I'm talking about. But he's telling them, don't do that. God is a jealous God. He doesn't want them doing that. He doesn't want them worshiping all these fake idols. He doesn't want them turning to other nations either. For I am jealous over you with godly jealousy, for I have espoused you to one husband, that I may present you as a chaste virgin to Christ. That's this metaphor, this kind of bride metaphor that he keeps using with his people. Well, you don't want your bride turning to another man for help, right? That's a pretty negative thing in your marriage. He doesn't want that going on. There in the first part of 30, and back in the 8th century BC, late 8th century BC, 720s down to 700 is the time frame we're talking here. They start turning to Egypt for help. And it's not, he's saying don't do that. Don't do that. And then you get to verse 8. And he's saying, hey, this warning, all of this stuff that he says, 1 through 7, you can read it. He says, now go, write it before them in a table and note it in a book, that it may be for the time to come forever and ever. He's saying, write this warning down so that the future generations don't turn to these other nations. It's a big no-no. Don't do it. But they do it. They had all these examples. They were rebellious. And this whole don't turn to these other nations or I'm going to destroy you, it's this whole type, antitype situation again. So what is going on there in Isaiah's time? They were going to be repeating it. It was going to be repeated there in the first century. And if you remember in Matthew chapter 23, he's saying, hey, you're sitting there, you Jewish leaders, you bad guys, you're sitting there saying, we're not like our fathers, we don't do bad stuff, we're not. He's saying, you are your fathers. You're doing exactly the same thing. I'm going to destroy you. Type, antitype. The previous generations did it, and then the ancestors made the same mistakes. That's chapter 23. You can read that pretty strong in there. The leaders of the Jews here, I think this is kind of funny. I laugh kind of when I read this, because the leaders of the Jews are like, stop telling us about the Holy One of Israel. We're tired of hearing that. Stop telling us that. And then Isaiah, verse 11, the way I read verse 11, he repeats the message from the Holy One of Israel just because they didn't want to hear it anymore. He's like, oh, you don't want to hear it again? Well, here's what the Holy One of Israel says about that. I think it's comical. I don't know if it was or whatever, but I kind of think it's funny that right after they say, please don't do it again, I don't know that they said please. He does it again. Their spiritual adultery, their iniquity would cause their downfall. And you start getting into a couple of these metaphors here. It would be sudden. It would be complete. It would be disastrous. It would be this utter desolation, this complete desolation for Judah and Jerusalem. He's saying, you're going to turn to other nations for help. I'm going to completely destroy you. I'm tired of you cheating on me. Assyria, the type here, does not do this. They don't destroy Judah and Jerusalem. Okay, they run around the country, killing people and everything, but they never breach the walls. Judah and Jerusalem, or specifically Jerusalem, is never destroyed by the Assyrians. That's the story where the 185,000 are killed outside by God. Sennacherib goes back to Nineveh, and eventually his sons kill him off, if y'all remember all the history there. Assyria doesn't accomplish verse 13. Doesn't accomplish verse 14. Rome does. In the first century, in this messianic prophecy here, dealing with the first century AD, when the transition from Judaism to Christianity would take place, Rome accomplishes these things. They are breached, the wall busts, they're a broken pottery vessel. Isaiah's just going all over the place with these metaphors, using all these different metaphors. He's talking about the first century. He's talking about, I'm going to go back here, the things for the time to come. The things in the future, not the things during our time. Write these things down so that 700-800 years later, you'll know. That's the prophecy that's being given here. Not my words here. This guy, I don't know when this commentator lived, but just to show you I'm not the only one that says this stuff. Barnes here, that is that it should be broken into small fragments and the ruin should be complete. The Republic of Israel would be completely ruined. The prophet does not specify when this would be. It is not necessary to suppose that it would occur on the invasion of Sennacherib, or that it would be the immediate consequence of seeking the aid of Egypt. All the events during Isaiah's lifetime, he's saying that's not when this punishment is going to come. Because you don't have to assume that's going to come in Isaiah's day. But that it would be a consequence, though a remote one. Perhaps the figure used would lead us to look to some remote period. For some time it may appear to be stationary, then perhaps some new case will produce an increase of the projecting part, talking about the wall that's going to eventually get too much strain on it and bust and crumble and fall apart. Until it can no longer sustain itself, and then the ruin will be sudden and tremendous. So it would be with the Jews. The seeking of the alliance with Egypt was one cause, though a remote one, of their final ruin, their complete and utter desolation. And it goes on and says they're going to keep adding to it and adding to it and adding to it. And the state would fall like a mighty bursting wall. The prophecy was kind of fulfilled in the invasion of Jerusalem by the Chaldees, by the Babylonians, but they're not completely wiped out there. A bunch of them remain behind. They come out of it. Nothing ceases about their kingdom. Nothing ceases about their religion, their worship. They're not completely and utterly destroyed at that point. They just go into a captivity for 70 years or whatever it is. But it had a more signal and awful fulfillment in its destruction by the Romans. The Romans fulfill verse 13, verse 14. They are the ones that completely and utterly wipe out the Jews. What's ironic about that is that the Romans are the ones they turned to for help. If you know your history, and I had to look these names up. I knew there was something there, but I had to go back and study it up. You had these two sons, these two Jewish sons that are kind of fighting for power there in Jerusalem. This Hyrcanus and Aristobulus. I'm saying those right. Basically, the Pharisees versus the Sadducees is what I get out of it. Aristobulus, the Sadducee guy, he calls for Pompey, and y'all know Pompey. Okay, this is back Julius Caesar type days. He calls for Pompey to intervene with this huge bribe of tons of money. 8,000 kilograms of silver. I don't know how they get that it was kilograms, but whatever. Pompey takes it. He's like, okay, I'll help out. And he comes, but he doesn't help the guy that gave him all the money. He sides against him. He sides with Hyrcanus. He sides with the Pharisees. And it makes me think of verse 6. If you go back up a couple of verses, it says, the Jews, they will carry their riches upon the shoulders of young asses and their treasures upon the bunches of camels to a people that shall not profit them. And that's exactly what happened. Rome is fulfilling this chapter. Rome is the one they cheat on God with. Rome is the one that takes their money and doesn't help them out. Rome is the one that never leaves, that starts to have this big influence on them, and eventually they're the ones that destroy them. Verse 15, he's saying, you guys got to repent. In verse 16, they say no. Now we're not going to. And then he says in verse 17, the one I wanted to focus on here, he says, 1,000 shall flee at the rebuke of one. Isaiah is not the original author of those words. He's quoting Moses. When Moses is talking about the Jews, this stubborn nation, there's no understanding in them, but I wish they would consider their latter end, the latter days of the Jews, the end of the Jewish age, the Mosaical age. And look, how should one chase 1,000? Well, how? How does that happen? How does one chase 1,000? Well, that can only happen if their rock had sold them, meaning God gave them up to destruction. We've referenced Deuteronomy 28 through 32 a bunch of times. It's Isaiah's quoting it here. When Rome would come in and take their money and then destroy them because they were cheating on God. There's more to it than this. If you want to read a bunch of stuff that goes along with this, you want to read about the end of the Jews, the original time it's promised in a big way, read Deuteronomy 28 through 32. You're like, oh, it's talking about the latter end of the Jews, the end of the Jewish age. The apostles are sitting there in Matthew 24. Hey, Christ, tell us, when is that temple going to be destroyed? When is the end of the age coming? When is the end of the Jewish age coming? He's not talking about the end of time. He's not talking about the end of the planet. He's talking about the end of the Jews. And that's the context of what we've been in the whole time in here.
Hey, Court. So it's a little bit of a sidebar.
Back.
It's an interesting point. Yeah, like so verse
Okay.
15. Think about this.
Verse what?
Verse 15 here.
Okay.
This is the repent and you'll be saved. It's not written exactly like that, but the thrust of it's that way. There is this interesting bit about like this prophetic future prophecy, right? It's written out in this conditional, if you do this, and if you do this, and if you do this, and it's like laying out this map of, well, I'm going to do this, and then you're going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and you're going to do this, but the free choice is still on men all the way through. And that's an important thing when you're thinking about this, you know, we play an active role in the outcome here. He knew we were going to, but it's still our choice and it's still our moral burden.
Absolutely, and I'm getting to in the next couple of slides. Some of them do. Mm-hmm. Some of them return to him. That's kind of what 15 is saying. Return unto me.
Yeah.
Many of you would not, and then you're going to see how this remnant, this residue, this remnant comes out of it because they did turn back to him. And of course, you've got Acts 2, 37, 38. You've got those kind of verses in there that kind of confirm that some of them do return back to God after killing Christ. So yes, not only does he give them the choice, some of them did make the right choice. Mm-hmm. They did heed these warnings. So because not every Jew was killed. Many turned to Christianity.
Yeah, that's an interesting case on the omniscience of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, if you think about, if God can predict the future, then we're just playing out his grand play. But what's been interesting is that if you pay attention to passages like this, the prediction of the future is a conditional prediction, and it plays out both sides. And it's, as you said, you have some that choose to follow and some that choose to fall away, and the fall away group is destroyed.
Yeah.
And so the prophecy is even more affirming of God's omniscience, but also, if you think about it, it's informing of God's love and forgiveness. It's informing of
mercy,
God's ultimate plan to reconcile those that wanted to choose him. There's a lot that's in that.
I think this is full on Acts 2 to me.
Yeah.
That's and in a slide or two you'll see that I have it up there. Exactly. Couldn't agree more. 18 and 20. We'll get back to verse 19 in a second. Let me read these. And therefore will the Lord wait, this is what you're talking about, that he may be gracious unto you, and therefore will he be exalted, that he may have mercy upon you. This is exactly what you were just saying. For the Lord is a God of judgment. Blessed are all they that wait for him. And though the Lord give you the bread of adversity and the water of affliction, you've got these bad things that are happening to you when this prophecy is fulfilled, yet blessed be those who would wait. Yet shall not thy teachers be removed into a corner anymore, but thine eyes shall see thy teachers. I think this is first century. I think it's that worst time ever that Daniel talks about, that Matthew talks about it, saying, hey, remember back when Daniel said the worst time ever would happen, what's now happening? That's what it's talking about. When I give you this first century persecution, and there was great persecution against the church there in Jerusalem, Acts 8:1. I'm giving you this, but if you hold on through it, if you hold faithful, if you don't turn away, denounce me or whatever, you're going to be very blessed. You're going to benefit.
Do you not identify? I loved what Tom said, but it applies so much to us today.
Absolutely does.
Look what's going on, and yet.
No. Absolutely. This class is not one of those application classes, but if you really think about all of the stuff we're saying, it all applies to you too.
Oh,
right? Don't cheat on God.
Today.
Right? Hold fast in whatever dealings with you might be dealing with in your life. I don't focus on that because I'm trying to connect it to the first century. I'm trying to do that more so than it'd be an application class. But you're absolutely right. I've seen other people teach this kind of stuff, and they'll do 45 minutes of teaching what it is, and then the last 10 minutes of class, they'll be like, okay, now how does this apply to our lives today? Might be a good way to do it, but I don't know, maybe the next time if I ever teach this again, I'll do it then. But yeah, you're absolutely right. So, you have it said a couple of different times. The one I wanted to focus on, the one I chose to focus on, I think like half of y'all were in my Daniel class, and the end of Daniel here, he says the same thing. He says, blessed are those that wait. And this is like one of the very last verses in the entire book of Daniel. He says, blessed is he that waiteth, and cometh to the 1,335 days. 1335 days. And Daniel 12:7 is talking about, this prophecy is about the breaking in pieces the power of the holy people, the destruction of the Jews. Daniel 9, the destruction of the city and the sanctuary. Daniel 10:14, which I think is my next slide. Hey Daniel, I'm going to show you what's going to befall your people, the Jews, in their last days. At the end of the age, the Jewish age, there in the first century. Well, they were given this troublesome times. They were given this persecution. They were getting it from the Jews. They were getting it from Nero. They were going through this awful mess, and then you have Vespasian and Titus come in and destroy the city, and that was worse than awful. Worse than awful. They're eating their own babies in there. It's horrendous. Deuteronomy says they would. It says you're going to eat your flesh that comes out from between your legs. Josephus records moms eating their babies during the siege of Jerusalem there in 70 AD. Gross stuff. I hate that part. It turns my stomach to read. But for those that would wait for him, they would be blessed. Well, what is this 1335? I believe, and I've had many different people count it, not telling them what it was. I said, tell me, how many days is it from the destruction of Jerusalem, Tish B'Av, the 9th of Av, in what we call 70 AD, to the 15th of Nisan, the day after the fall of Masada in 74 AD. How many days is that? And they're like, that's 1335 days. Blessed are you that would wait. Blessed are you that would wait until that, all that massive bad stuff was over. You're going to be blessed. You're going to be able to get out of that awful Jewish persecution. Does it mean nothing bad is ever going to happen to a Christian again? No, that's not what it's talking about. It doesn't say that. It's not talking about that. It's talking about that horrendous time there in the first century when the city and the sanctuary would be destroyed. When the latter end of thy people, Daniel's people, would happen. When the breaking of the pieces of the power of the holy people would happen. When that was complete, and it kind of ends there in the first century with the fall of Messiah. That's the last. After that, peace is declared. Christians are safe at that point. The church was going to survive. And then it starts spreading all over the world, and including into Rome. In the middle of that, he's saying, for the people that shall dwell in Zion at Jerusalem, and you should be thinking the antitype Zion at Jerusalem. You should be thinking the Christian church here. Thou shalt not weep anymore, for he will be very gracious unto thee at the voice of thy cry. When he shall hear it, he will answer thee. This makes me think of Revelation 21:4. No more crying. He said, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall be any more pain. From this persecution, from this first century trouble that you're going through, from this isolated event. Because these things are going to pass away. These Jewish things, these former things, they're going to pass away and not be able to be giving you that level of persecution anymore. And it's not the only, these aren't the only places that say it. This is the much better section that says the exact same thing. Isaiah 65, and ye shall leave your name for a curse. You shall leave that Jewish name because the Jews would be cursed. That's a whole lesson on itself. For the Lord shall slay thee, and he's going to call his servants by another name. It was the only time in history where they switched from Judaism to something else. Christians in the first century. So you have your win locked in. That he who blesseth himself in the earth shall bless himself in the God of truth, and he that sweareth in the earth shall swear by the God of truth, because the former things are passed away. Because the former troubles are forgotten. That's what it's talking about. It's talking about the things that were giving them problems there in the first century. And because they are hid from mine eyes, for behold, for those of you who've been in here, you won't get this yet, okay? Everybody else has been in here and heard this 1,000 times. I create new leadership for Christianity. The Son of Righteousness. The new heavens are here. And Christians are replacing those former things. The leaders of the Christians and the Christians are replacing these former things that are not going to come. The old heavens and earth. Revelation 21:1. I, John, saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the former, the first heaven and first earth, were passed away. And there's no more separation of Jew and Gentile. See. It's not literal. It's not literal. It's talking about the transition from Judaism to Christianity. The transition from the cursed name to the new name of Christian. It's talking about the old Jewish leadership and people getting their utter desolation and destruction, and the new leadership and people, Christ and the Christians, coming in. And it's followed by, when all of this is going on, 65 verse 15 on, it's followed by, and I will rejoice in Jerusalem, in the church here, and the voice of weeping shall be no more heard in her, nor the voice of crying. And then the death part. There shall be no more the Thence an infinite days, nor an old man that have not filled his days, for the child, no more unnatural death is really what you should be reading it as. No more death from this persecution. When this transition is complete. You have it again in Revelation 6:10. You had it there in Revelation 21:4, but you have it again in 6:10, and you might read this a little different now. Now that you've been in this class for a long time, you'll say, this is Matthew chapter 23. When you read this, your brain should be going to Matthew 23, not some end of time thing, for those that have been in here a long time. They cried with a loud voice, those that cry unto me, this is the Isaiah verse, those that cry unto me, I'm going to answer you. You've been given this bread of affliction, this water of affliction, whatever it is. But those that cry unto me, I'm eventually going to answer it, and you're going to be blessed. They cried with a loud voice there in Revelation, there in the first century, saying, how long, O Lord, holy and true, how long is it going to take you to judge and avenge our blood on the Jews? And when you read Matthew chapter 23, matter of fact, let's just do it, because we've referenced it so many times. Verse 31, wherefore ye be witness unto yourselves that ye are the children of them that killed the prophets. Fill ye up then the measure of your fathers, ye serpents, ye generation of vipers. How can ye escape the damnation of hell? Wherefore, behold, I will send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them ye shall scourge in your synagogues and persecute them from city to city. You Jews, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth. From the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias the son of Barachias, whom you slew between the temple and the altar. Verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation, the ones he was talking to. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often I would have gathered thy children together. Isaiah chapter 30, verse 1. Even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. This is just Matthew chapter 23. It's the precursor. Benson, another commentary from Bible Hub. What is he saying it is? Is he saying it's some future event, future to us event? Is he saying it's something to do? No, he's saying it's messianic prophecy. This chapter is talking about when God should take vengeance upon the enemies of his people. Perhaps, he's not as adamant as I am, perhaps the destruction of Jerusalem and of the temple with the subversion of the Jewish state and the slaughter of immense multitudes of Jews. Events connected with the calling of the Gentiles. This is how you know, because we've seen it over and over that the Gentiles, the nations from afar, would come in. This is your time element, and the extensive propagation of the gospel. This is Benson saying it. This is probably what's first in Isaiah's mind. And I've been saying that from the beginning that yeah. He's talking about Assyria, but he doesn't care about Assyria. He cares about Christ and that transition to Christianity. Their ultimate end, their more important end, or judgment. And thine ears shall hear a word. It's highlighted in green. You should know what it is. Behind you saying, this is the way. Who is the way? Jesus. There's no question in this class what this is talking about. This is a messianic prophecy here. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's exactly what this is. That way is going to come and guide them. It will be their light to show them the way. Verse 25, and there shall be upon every high mountain and upon every high hill in this new kingdom, this new place of worship, rivers and streams of the waters of life. Christ says, I will give thee water that you're never going to thirst again. And he's talking about himself as the gospel. This is a messianic prophecy. All of it is. Yes, he's using things that happened in his time to illustrate what would happen in the first century. But he is the messianic prophet. This is the fifth gospel. That's what he's focusing on. And when you read 23 through 25, it's kind of fun. Let me get back there and actually read that. What are we in, chapter 30? 23 through 25. Then shall he give the rain of thy seed, that thou shalt sow the ground withal, and bread of the increase of the earth, and it shall be fat and plenteous. In that day shall thy cattle feed in large pastures. Good things, all these good things here. The oxen likewise and the young asses that ear to the ground shall eat clean provender, which have been winnowed with the shovel. All this farm and agriculture stuff, that's positive, okay? We don't actually know what it is on some of it, but, and I grew up in the country. And there shall be upon every high mountain and upon every high hill rivers and streams of waters in the day of the great slaughter, when your defenced city fell. When Judaism falls, when Jerusalem is destroyed, Christianity would be blessed. They would take off, they would spread, they would cover the whole face of the planet. I don't want to say earth. That's reserved for representing the Jewish people. When that great slaughter happens, that's when Christ is going to come. That's when the way is going to come. That's when the rivers of life are going to come. And what would the things that are planted by this rivers of life, what would they produce? What would they yield? You know it. What's the answer? The tree is planted by the river of life. What's it going to produce?
Fruit.
The fruit. The fruit of the Spirit. It's not literal. It's not physical. It's spiritual. It's metaphorical. This is a fun one to me. Moreover, the light, verse 26, moreover, the light of the moon shall be as the light of the sun, and the light of the sun shall be sevenfold. Messianic prophecy, why? Because under the new Christian system, now you have the king and the high priest held together in one office. That wasn't a thing in Judaism. Remember, I think it was Hezekiah. Hezekiah is the Jewish king, and he was a good guy. He was a real good king during this stuff. And he runs into the temple, and he's like, oh, let me do the work. I'm so thankful God saved us from the Assyrians or whatever. He runs in there, tries to do the high priest duties. The high priest was like, no, don't do it, don't do it. What happens to him? Y'all remember?
He dies, right?
He doesn't die right away. I think he gets stricken with leprosy. And he's soon to die, but he's like, he sprints. He's like beats Usain Bolt out of the building. I think that's the way that is described there. And I think it's in the middle passages here. Repents, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, I've done everything, please, whatever. And God's like, okay, I'm going to give you 15 more years. So it doesn't kill him right away. He does not execute the punishment that he should have gotten by doing that, because he was overall a very, very good king. He was a very good guy. But the light of the moon and the light of the sun, when Christ takes over, they're going to be the same. The sun, the moon, this supreme light and this secondary light, these rulers are going to be combined. They're going to be the same. And it's going to be much brighter than those old Jewish leadership, than that old Jewish leadership. Don't look at it in English terms of sevenfold. Look at it in Jewish terms. It's going to be completely brighter than those old Jewish lights, the old Jewish leadership. That's Christ. That's your Son of Righteousness. That's the light that takes over in Christianity, that shows us the way, that gives us the water. And the city, the church, the New Jerusalem, had no need of that Jewish leadership. They didn't need the sun or the moon anymore. That stuff is gone. It's obsolete. For the glory of God did light it, and the Lamb is the Son of Righteousness thereof. Christ is now King and High Priest. And the church, what would the church be consisted of? And the nations of them which are saved shall walk in the light of it. Here's your Gentiles coming into the church. Just like Benson was saying. And the kings of the earth do bring their glory and honor into it, and the gates of it shall not be shut at all by day. There's not going to be night there. Christ is 7 times as brighter, or completely brighter. So much more perfect than that Jewish leadership.
You know, there's an interesting thing to observe here. We talked a lot about this breakpoint between Judaism and Christianity, right? And there is this suffering period that's going to hit the Christians while this sorting out is going on, right? One thing that, like, if you look at history, you tend to find that the more persecuted Christians are, the more Christianity tends to spread.
Yes, especially true in the Roman Empire.
Is that also true of Judaism? Here's my thought, and
I don't know.
I'm kind of thinking out loud. Think of it this way. In Judaism, God picked a people. We didn't pick him. That's one of the differences between Judaism and Christianity. All the people in Judaism
Born into it.
Right? All the people in Christianity
Chose to get
in on the first side. So in Jewish persecution, there's moments where the nation of Israel is persecuted, and the more they turn to God, the more the persecution ends up blessing them. And the times when they turn away from God, persecution destroys them.
I think that's the pattern over history, right?
Yeah, man.
I'm pretty sure.
And so I find it an interesting fact that he displaced a nation with an opt-in nation of sorts.
Oh, yeah.
You know, a nation that was forced in genealogy and has moved it now into a choice structure. And it's one of the ways in which the new kingdom is better than the old.
And that's kind of the book of Hebrews, right?
Yeah.
It's this new kingdom is so much better than this old physical Jewish lineage kingdom. Yeah, I kind of think so. Behold, verse 27, almost done here. Behold, the name of the Lord cometh from afar, burning with his anger. And remember, I think this is back to Deuteronomy 28 through 32. I think you find it kind of repeated there. Deuteronomy 28, this is Moses' last hurrah. Right, they're about to cross over and go into the promised land. He says, because thou, you Jews, servest not the Lord thy God, he's going to put this yoke of iron on your neck until he's destroyed you completely and utterly. Remember, chapter 32 is, should they consider their latter end, the end of them? That's what we're talking about here. This is what Moses is warning them about. It's what Isaiah is prophesying about. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from afar. The Lord is bringing in the Romans. From the ends of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth. You've got a couple eagle references here, if you want to go dig into that. A nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Huge clue. They didn't understand Latin. They could understand these languages, the Semitic languages, Assyrian, Babylonian, all of that stuff. They were all kind of same base. They could not understand Latin. It tells you who it is, this nation from afar, this nation of fierce countenance, who's not going to regard the person of old, nor show favor to the young, and he shall eat the fruit of thy cane. He's going to consume everything until you're completely destroyed. Which shall also not leave thee either corn, wine, oil, increase of the kind, flocks of the sheep. He's going, God is going to come as this nation from afar, whose language you don't understand, and they're going to wipe you out. Babylonians don't do that. The Assyrians don't do that. Rome does that. And in that Roman siege, somewhere else in this chapter, the Jewish women are eating their babies. His lips, they're full of this indignation, this anger, this punishment is coming. Daniel 8, a fun little one here for anybody that likes history. I don't think anybody in here likes history. And he said, behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation. The last end of your people, Daniel. For the time appointed, the end shall be. The end of the Jews, not the end of time. The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of the Medo-Persian Empire. Who is that? That's Cyrus and, what's the other one? Going blank. Whatever. The Medo-Persian kings. He's in the Bible. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia. And the great horn that is between his eyes is that first king. Who's that?
Alexander the Great.
Alexander the Great. No question, everybody agrees. Now that being broken, when Alexander dies, the Diadochi come, Seleucid, Ptolemy, Antigonus, and is it Lysimachus or Cassander? Cassander rules. Lysimachus is one of the other generals. Okay. 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. And in the latter time of their kingdom, kind of at the end of the Greek rule, when these Jewish transgressors are come to a full, you're going to have this king of fierce countenance uttering these dark sentences come. This nation from afar. This is going to be the instrument of God's judgment. It's talking about the Romans. Daniel 10:14, right after the 70 weeks, where he says, when the city and the sanctuary would be destroyed, which we know happened in 70 AD. He says, now I am come to make thee understand what shall befall your people, Daniel, what shall befall the Jews in the latter days. The latter days of the Jewish age. And then 36 through 45, skipping out a couple of them, this is talking about this Roman line here, these Caesars. The king of the north were the Seleucid kings. The king of the south was the Ptolemies. And the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and he shall speak marvelous things against the god of gods, and shall prosper until this indignation that Isaiah is talking about would be completed. Rome was going to finish the job. The Caesars were going to do that. He's going to go forth with great fury to destroy and utterly to make away many. And then he comes. He comes and he sets up camp by Jerusalem and destroys. Rome does that. Nero gives the order. Vespasian starts it. Titus finishes it, if you know your Roman history then. And then he shall come to his end, and none shall help. That's describing Nero. And the mark of the man, we've already been over the 666, also describing Nero. Okay? His lips are full of indignation, his tongue as a devouring fire. He's making this, he's saying it's going to happen. It's going to happen. He's going to judge them. His words is the standard there. The word of God is quick and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword. And out of his mouth went a sharp, two-edged sword. Revelation 1 is talking about that judgment against the Jews from this nation from afar. It's all connected. I'm going through it a little fast here because we got 5 minutes. And I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on the very last verse. I've been working very, very hard on it. I've been working so hard. Huh?
Just jump to it.
I've been working so hard on the last one, here, that I decided, okay, I'm not going to do it. So he's kind of winding up this little passage, this little thought. The chapter break here is probably accurate. A lot of times it's not. He's saying, I'm going to deal with the Assyrians. They're not going to be able to accomplish. They're the enemies of my people. They're not going to be successful. He says, for Tophet is ordained of old, yea, for the king it is prepared. He hath made it deep and large, the pile thereof is fire and much wood. The breath of the Lord, like a stream of brimstone, doth kindle it. Now, I've talked at length with Tom and Cody about this, so they're barred from answering, because they already know the answer. What is Tophet? Does anybody know? Tophet is the, I'm going to make up something here. It's your job to go say whether I'm right or not. This is kind of where the idea of hell comes from. And let me explain it. Tophet is a place just outside Jerusalem in the valley of Hinnom. You can find the valley of Hinnom all over the place in the Old Testament. This is what Tophet is, the valley of Hinnom. That is where they would basically burn their trash. It's like a landfill, an incinerator type landfill. But some very bad stuff would happen there. This is where some of the kings, Ahaz specifically, some of the others would, and they made their children to pass through the fire. They would do these human sacrifices to Molech, to Baal. This is a bad, bad place. The valley of Hinnom is what we're talking about here. And we've got some Old Testament references if you want to go read the awful stuff that these guys were doing to their kids there. Well, in the Hebrew, it's called Valley of Hinnom. In the Greek, Valley of is pronounced Gehenna. Gehenna is Greek for the Valley of Hinnom, for Tophet, this trash place outside of Jerusalem. We have now gone and translated Gehenna as hell. This is the origin, this is the type antitype, if you will, for hell. This is Gehenna. I am not at all going to get into what is hell, all the different theories out there. I've talked at length to multiple people in here. Not a single person thinks the same thing about it. I'm just trying to tell you the origins of the word. He's going to send that Assyrian king, not literally to this pit outside of Jerusalem. He's not literally going to take that king and go throw him in the trash pile and burn it with the fire and brimstone, the lake of fire. He's figuratively saying, I'm going to destroy this Assyrian empire and their cause that they're going to fail. Their mission is going to die. That's what he's doing to it. I'm not going any further than that. Do not ask me questions. Do not add comments. I see you.
I've got one on your last point. So you're talking about how Jesus is like now the unified king priest, right?
Uh-huh.
That maybe 2 points ago. Here's an interesting thought. Carol actually had me thinking of something the other day. I thought I'd exhausted the topic of Melchizedek, and I decided to sort of go revisit that. It turns out that Melchizedek, Christ is of the order of Melchizedek. There's a lot of weird that comes with that.
King and high priest,
King and high priest. It looks like Moses was actually supposed to be king and high priest.
but he didn't want it. He didn't want the job.
And so it was given to Aaron out of fury from God, really. And so it's not just that it was always a separate king and priesthood, it was that it split at the time of Moses and was reunified with Jesus.
Yep, I agree with that. All right. Do not run out of here and say, court said hell was just this trash pile outside of Jerusalem. Do not say that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that's just the origin of the word. So,